It's gonna get confusing if I start every video this way. But yes, you guessed it, we're over here at the winter pasture this morning. I say we because, you know, Callie's back there. I'm just checking cows, making sure everything is okay. Then we can get started with the rest of the day. That's what's going on today on Farmer Tyler Ranch. Some of you might remember that several years ago, it was actually when I bought Rivet, that I put a bunch of wood chips here in this working corral with the idea of raising it up a little bit and reducing the mud. Putting the wood chips in here was actually pretty effective in doing that. I was happy with how it went, but what I'm noticing now is that the wood chips are mostly all decomposed and you can't really find them anymore. Maybe you can see a little bit, like there's one right there, but mostly you really can't see it anymore. So what I'm thinking is that the top, let's say 4 to 6 inches of this corral is a mixture of decomposed wood chips, manure, and hay. And I think that those things mixed together are gonna be really good to spread out on the pasture. So the plan today is to go grab the LS and use it to sort of remove this top layer in here, which I think will be a really easy job for that tractor. And we're gonna put it in the manure spreader. That's why I filled up the 8N, because I'm gonna try to use the 8N to pull the spreader to spread this out on the field. And while I've got the LS down here, I wanna take the portable pen and move it up by the barn where the weeds are getting, well, I shouldn't call them weeds. There actually is some good grass in there, but it's getting to be like knee high or even higher than that. And he's pretty much taking care of this area. So I think we need to put them to work over there. And as it so happens, I've got a nice pile of wood chips here that we can put back into the working corral and start this process all over again. I was also thinking about pulling the forms on the concrete this evening if there's time. And a couple things that I wanted to touch on about this project. First thing is I was surprised how many people asked me the same question, which tells me I must have not explained it as well as I thought I did. But everybody was asking why did I leave the center of this open? Why didn't I run the concrete all the way across? You know, I kept calling this a ramp, and as you look at it, it's really not a ramp. The concrete itself is only acting as a retaining wall. The middle here I'll fill up with dirt, or I'll probably go get some arena sand because that stuff packs pretty hard. The reason that I didn't want a concrete ramp is because they have a tendency to be really slippery for hooves, and you know, with cows jumping in the trailer, I didn't want them falling. The other part of that is that when you got cattle walking up this alleyway to get into the trailer, they're already kind of leery and nervous about what's going on. When you ask them to set foot on a surface they're not familiar with, they just don't want to do it. So if I had a concrete ramp, my fear would be that they would all just stop right here and sniff it, and it would kind of hurt the flow going into the trailer. If I've got a dirt or a gravel ramp, then they're not going to think twice about walking on that. That's something that they're familiar with, and that's why I'm doing it this way. And then the other thing I wanted to mention about this project real quick, which just kind of made me chuckle. I spent so much time trying to get the concrete to look nice, and wouldn't you know, must have been shortly after I left that night, one of those barn cats came here and walked on it. What are you gonna do? You know, animals just can't seem to resist fresh concrete. I've seen it happen time and again. In fact, in my shop, that concrete was poured, oh, who knows how long ago, and there are some dog tracks in there. Did you see my parking brake? I seem to remember these tires being a little bit low the last time I used this thing, so we'll top them off, put some grease in it, and hopefully it'll make it through the day. That sounds like it's empty. Isn't that the way it always goes? The grease gun is empty. I wish there was some sort of like a sight gauge or, you know, some way to know how much was in there. But anyway, what I'll do, I'll just leave it here and I'll throw an extra tube of grease in the LS when we come over and we can finish servicing the old spreader. First thing, while I got the forks on the tractor, I want to try to move littles here down to that tall grass. So I've got an idea of how I can do this. So we're gonna try. Well, do you see where I'm going with this? I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why don't I just drag it, which I guess I could do, but I suspect that this would maybe not hold together because, you know, these panels are pretty flimsy. So what I'm gonna do instead is try to attach the corners of the pen back to the tractor and lift the whole thing up so I can basically like have it hovering off the ground, and then we're just gonna go real slow, and I think that littles will just walk right along with me. Well, I guess I'll move it the rest of the way by hand. I caught the corner in some mud there and it's not working. So we'll do it by hand. Well, that ought to keep him happy for the rest of the day. And remember when I told you that these panels are kind of weak? Well, you can see this one on the end here bowed in quite a bit. So I don't know, maybe moving this with the tractor is not the way to go, but I just didn't want to drag it this far. So what's done is done. We'll let him eat, and I can probably straighten this. There we go. Straight as it ever was. Well, I guess this is as good a place as any. I did a little bit of bale grazing here last fall, and we'll go ahead and throw some manure on top of it, I guess. Well, a very streaky application as always, but you know, it's kind of what I come to expect from this thing. So, first load's out. We'll just keep on trucking. Look at this stuff. I mean, that just looks good. Hopefully the grass agrees. This job is pretty fun with this tractor. It's almost like what I imagine running a bulldozer would be. I mean, you just put that bucket down and it'll pretty much push through anything that's in front of it, which is cool, but you also got to be careful, you know, that you stay away from the fence that I worked so hard on last year. And what's also nice with this tractor is, since I've got this monster bucket on the front, it only takes like 1.5 buckets to fill the manure spreader. I mean, I've been trying to put 2 on, but honestly, most of this is gonna fall off the side by the time I get down to where I'm going. So this is going pretty fast because of that. I think what takes the longest is just driving back and forth all this way that I gotta go. What I'm gonna do from here on is pretty much the same as what you've been watching me do already. So I'll pick the camera up when I'm done, or when I've done as much as I can. Well, wouldn't you know it, just as soon as I think I'm gonna put my head down and get a bunch done, we got a problem. When I was putting out this last load, I noticed that the manure spreader was just kind of running differently. It was sort of lurching and didn't sound quite the same. So I went back there to see what was going on, and I saw that my drive chain was all messed up. And I don't really have a photographic memory, but I seem to think that there used to be a spring that was tightening this tensioning arm, and sure enough, I looked around for a little bit and I did find it, so at least it's not still out there. But the funny or frustrating part, depending on how you look at it, is that that one little spring really makes the difference between whether or not that manure spreader will work or will not. So unfortunately, there's not really much more that I can do on this project because I can't spread the manure anymore. I thought about just, you know, taking the LS and getting everything cleaned out of here and just piling it up somewhere, and then when I do get the spreader fixed, I could load off of that pile, but I just don't really have a good place to do that, and it kind of seems like not the best use of time to double handle it that way. I mean, the Corral is still perfectly usable the way it is now, you know, like if I needed to get a cow in to help her, or when I need to run the yearlings through the chute, I can still do all that stuff. Things are just not quite how I want them to be in here or out here. I was really looking forward to getting these piles of wood chips out of the way, but I guess I'll have to live with them for a little bit longer. So, you know, I have a hard time redirecting my train of thought. You know, when I got my mind set to do something on a certain day, and then something like this happens and I can't do it, it just, I don't know, messes with me. I guess before I run the LS back home, I should probably smooth out all these piles that I left on the ground here from overfilling the spreader. Looks like everybody's here and accounted for. Nothing new going on today.
Right?
Things seem pretty quiet out here as well, which I guess, you know, is fine. The two cows that I'm really watching over here, one is 2307, who is actually a first-time heifer, which means she's never had a calf before. And out of the three that I have this year, the three heifers, she's the one that looks like she's the closest. I'd say about 80 or 90% of the time, heifers have their calves on their own with no problems, but it's that other 10 to 20% of the time that you got to be ready for. The other is number 59. She just looks like she could pop any minute. I'm kind of surprised that she hasn't yet. And it's not that I think 59 is going to need my help. In fact, it's quite the opposite. She's a proven cow that I don't think has ever given me any issues. But of course, there's always the possibility of a breached calf or a turnaround calf, I call it. I don't know actually what the clinical term is, but I've had 2 times in my life that I can remember where the calf was coming out right, except he had his head turned back, and they don't like to go through that way. And the other thing that I would be looking for with a proven cow is if she happens to have a set of twins. It seems like twins usually come a little bit earlier. I'm just basing that off of the fact that I have never had a late set of twins, but I've had several early sets of twins. It's been about 48 hours since I poured this, so I think it's time to take the forms off. This inside is going to be tough, I'm afraid, because of the way I had to build the form. The screw heads are inside the form, so I need to pull this all out as one piece, and I'm just hoping that I'm able to do that. Well, I think that turned out all right. It's certainly going to do the job, and you know, probably goes without saying, but I wanted to get the little concrete retaining wall finished before I welded in these last pipes, just so they weren't in the way, and you know, it'd be a lot easier to do it. So now that the concrete's done, there's no reason why I can't get back over here with the welder and get this finished. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys, and I hope I'll see you again on Farmer Tyler Ranch.